everybody. I am Laurie Smithwick, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to McCall Center for Art and Innovation. This is a mini art lab where we're going to be learning how to make an abstract acrylic painting using a few simple materials like a palette knife and some craft paint. And it's very easy. I think it's going to be easy for you to follow along. Let's get started. For starters, I'm going to show you the materials that you'll need to gather. So let's take a look at my view of my work surface where I can show you all the pieces that we need. Okay, so I've got one 9x12 canvas panel. And then I have gathered some basic craft paints that you can get at Michael's or any craft store or even Walmart. And I'm going to explain why I have the different colors, what we're going to use different colors for. So, but I have a whole bunch of different ones here. Gather whatever colors you like. That one just rolled off the table, but we'll pick it up. So we got some craft paints, and then I have a metal tray that I like to use as a palette, but you can use anything you like. You can use a plate, a paper plate, or a plastic plate. You can use palette paper. This is a disposable paper palette, which has sheets in here that are glossy and will work great for a quick disposable palette. You can use an actual plastic palette that has holes in it for different colors of paint, whatever you want to use as a palette. And then I also have some palette knives. And these come in all different shapes. You can just get an inexpensive collection of plastic palette knives. These work great. All the different shapes have different uses, but we're mostly going to be using this one and maybe a little bit of this one. But I also want to show you that if you have a disposable or plastic putty knife downstairs in your workshop, these actually work great too. Sometimes I use these myself when I am creating really big paintings. So any sort of a palette knife, whether it is for putty or for paint, will work great. All right. So now that I've gone over all the materials, why don't we get started? So working with a canvas. The canvases are all white to begin with. These are pre-primed, so it's actually natural color canvas, and these actually have been pre-primed with something called gesso, which is white and receives the paint really nicely. But the problem is that this solid white background, I think, creates a painting that doesn't have as much depth as we want to put into our painting. So we're gonna do a trick that creates depth. And the way we're gonna do that is with some dark paint. So we are going to start off, I like to use brown, a dark brown. You might see it called burnt umber or burnt sienna. You also might like a really dark gray. Some people like black. I personally like brown because it gives it sort of a warm feeling. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take some of this dark brown and I am actually going to mix a little bit of black into the dark brown to make it even darker. Okay, be careful how much black you put in, because once you've got it in there, it's hard to get it back out again. So I'm going to mix that together right here on my palette. And once we've got that mixed pretty well, we are going to use the knife to apply this to our palette. And here's how we're going to do that. We're going to literally take our palette knife and just drag it along the palette. And you want to create different amounts of dark and light using your knife. And so you see, like, if you scrape it, it makes it lighter, but then if you rub it with the flat side of the knife, it sort of spreads the paint on the palette. And so you want to just sort of do different amounts of light and dark, but you want to cover the whole palette with this dark color, whichever one you've chosen, whether it's black or brown or gray, or even like a dark blue. Anything you choose is going to achieve the same effect that we are going for. So I am painting, and then I've actually run out on my palette. So I'm going to add a little bit more paint. And I'm not going to mix this with black, and this way we're going to have some slightly different color in the background, and that's a good thing too. Okay, so we're just going to get the whole canvas covered. And once it's covered, then we can sort of smooth it around and figure out what's going to be dark and what's going to be light. And we're just going to let that dry. So, okay, we've got full coverage now, and I'm just going to go around and do some smoothing, some smooth application, and some scraping, and that'll create a lot of different depths, which is what we want here. So we want this to have a lot of depth to it, some different feel all the way around. And then we're just going to let that dry. So the more paint you leave on there, the longer it's going to take to dry, of course. So we're going to go away for a few minutes so you don't have to sit here and watch paint dry, because we all know how exciting that is. Put another scrape in here. All right, so I will see you when this paint is dry. While you're waiting for this to dry, you may want to go ahead and wipe off this palette knife. So you can either do that with a paper towel, or you can just go and wash it off in the sink. That's the other thing that's nice about using these craft paints, is that they are non-toxic and will be fine if you wash them off in the sink. And if you need to wash your hands, this is a good time to do that too. We are dry now. Hopefully yours is as well. I actually have a couple of little spots that are still a teeny tiny bit wet, and that's okay because we're going to use that to our advantage. But theoretically, you should be dry enough to rub your fingers on it. And so now what we are going to do is we are going to take our white paint. Okay, I've got a few different ones here, and we are going to cover all of the brown with white again. And I know that we started with a white canvas and that might seem a little odd, but remember what we're trying to do here is create some depth in the canvas that we're looking at. And so we're going to now cover this whole thing with white paint, and then we can begin our painting, our actual painting. So this white is a little bit of a warm white. The color is bisque. And then I also have a bright white. And we're going to use a little bit of both because we want to get some different colors going on here once again in the attempt to create some depth. So we're going to take our palette, and I'm going to put some white. Actually, let me shake this up. So I'm going to put some white on the palette. Some white here. This is the bright white. This one's almost out, obviously. Got another one though. Why this one's not coming out? Oh, it's got its skin dry. Black. Okay, be sure to shake up your paints really well so that you get them mixed. All right, so you can't really tell, but this one, maybe you can. This one is a tiny bit warmer than this one. And then I'm also going to add a little bit of yellow, and that will give us some warm that we can add as well. We can tip that in. And I'm also going to add a little bit of light blue, and that will give us some cool. And I got paint on my hands. You probably will too. It's cool to have paint on your hands. All right, so we're not going to mix these in right now. We're just going to take our palette knife, okay, and we're going to take some of this white, plain white, and just like with the brown, we're now going to put the white on top of the brown. And you see how you can see the brown through there, so it's a white that has a lot more depth than the white that of the gessoed canvas that we started with. See, this one's a little bit warmer. I'm not sure if that shows on camera, but you can see it here. And I'll take a little bit of blue and get that in there and mix it in. And I'll take a little bit more of this. And we're just going to cover the entire canvas in the white now. And then we're going to let this dry. And that will be the canvas that we're going to start to paint on. All right, and you'll end up with something that's got a lot of depth in it and feels a little bit more professional and a little bit more dense and a little bit more interesting than starting with just the plain white canvas. Obviously, if you're looking to create art that is flat and crisp, starting with the white of the gessoed canvas is just fine. There's no law. But for our mini art lab, we are looking to create art that has some depth to it. All right, and so just like before, we're going to go around and sort of smooth some stuff out. It dries pretty quickly, which is good. I'm going to add a little bit of this yellow, put some warmth in there. Okay. Get a little bit more white in here. Okay, got a little bit more of the bright white. Push that on there, scrape that on, just get a little more coverage. And then before we let this dry all the way, what I want you to do is we're going to mark out where we're going to paint this. And to do that, we're going to talk very briefly about the structure of a painting, okay? And one of the things, two of the things that make a good painting good are hierarchy and balance, okay? And so we are going to talk very briefly about those two things and then use that in structuring our painting. I'm going to take a paper towel and wipe off my palette knife. And when we create art, we want the art to have balance to it. So what that means is not having the same thing on both sides of the painting, but actually something maybe small and dark on one side and something large and light on the other. And the lightness and the darkness and the small and the large will balance each other out. So large and light, small and dark, those actually create balance in an interesting way. Your eye perceives them as equally balanced. And we're also going to do a little bit of hierarchy, which is what we want our eye to look at first. So if you could grab something, I should have included this in our list of supplies, something pointy. It can be a chopstick, which is what I use. It can be a pencil. It can be a toothpick. It can be a fork, the broken tine of a fork. It could even be one of your palette knives. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my chopstick and I'm actually going to draw some shapes on here, okay? So I'm going to create a basic horizon line like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put something, very big on the bottom, okay? And then I'm going to put something sort of smaller on the top, okay? And that's it. It's just a basic structure. And so what we've got here is we've got the top of our painting is a little bit larger than the bottom of our painting. And then we've got this circle here is a little bit larger than this narrow sort of skinny shape here. And we may not adhere to this exactly, but you just want to create a basic structure. So what I would recommend if you feel nervous about this at all is just copy what I've done, create your horizon line, create a large circle. You can make it even bigger if you want to, and something a little bit smaller here. And you know what, if you want to, you can use your stick to sort of add some lines, a little bit of depth. If you want to, some squiggles, sometimes that looks interesting. You know, just sort of to give it a little bit of interest. And then we're going to let this dry and we're going to add some color to the painting to start to give it our structure. Okay, so we're going to let this dry and then we'll be back when it is dry. All right, I think we're all dry now. So we can now start adding some color. So another thing that's great about all of these craft paints is that they come in so many colors. You don't have to do a ton of mixing of your own colors. You can just use them right out of the bottle in their great colors as they are. Like they've got these really pale blue colors that I think are really nice. And they've got a whole lot of greens, and you really can, you know, here's an example of like two drastically different oranges, and they're so expensive. These really, they cost like $1 each, and so they're a great way to be able to utilize a lot of different colors without having to mix your own. On the other hand, if you are interested in mixing colors yourself, you can really learn how to create, you know, a range of colors like these just by using red, yellow, and blue, and black, and white, and you can create some really dynamic color ranges by mixing your own colors. So don't want to persuade you not to mix your own colors, but we are going to take advantage of the speed that using these colors as is allows us. So what I'm going to do is I am going to start off with some of this sort of mustardy yellow, and I'm going to use some of this light blue, and I think I'm also going to add in some gray. We're going to start with this. So I'm going to take the mustard yellow, and I'm going to make this whole bottom circle yellow. So we're going to paint it with our palette knife. You can also, you know, once you're at this stage, you also could, if you wanted to, could just go put the paint directly on the canvas and then just spread it around if you don't want to use your palette here. But what I am going to do is I'm going to use some other colors in there just to give it a little bit more interesting look. So I'm adding a little bit of blue to that, just so that we've got some green, because hopefully you all remember from elementary school that blue and yellow make green. And so we're going to get that in there, but then we're going to add a little bit more of the yellow right on top of that. And we're going to just keep building depth that way. Right? So don't be afraid to put paint down and then put some more paint on top of it. And all of that is going to make it a little bit more interesting. Maybe we'll go out here a little bit with that blue. Just play around with it. All right, so now we've got a big, nice, big, round shape there. And we still have our horizon line. And I'm going to go in and paint that horizon line with the blue. Okay, and that's going to come in there and add some color to the yellow, of course. So we're going to do this, and we're going to get in there, and that's going to overtake this yellow. Got a green horizon line. Okay, and then after we let that dry a little bit, we're going to go back over that with some of the yellow. And let that yellow sort of dominate the horizon line here. And then last but not least, I'm going to come in with some gray. I'm going to put that right here, and we're going to use that to make this shape up here. So remember what I was saying, large and light and small and dark. And those are going to end up sort of balancing one another out that way. So I'm going to take this gray and I'm going to make that sort of I'm going to bring it down into this green and maybe even have it come out the bottom there a little bit. Okay, so that, and then maybe we'll make that shape not perfect. And then maybe put some hash marks in there, like that. All right, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll take that gray, and you want to have little repeats that appear elsewhere in your painting. So we'll take a little bit of gray and put it there, and maybe even take a little bit of gray and slide it in right there. And I think that will look good. And maybe we'll take some of our yellow and do the same thing. Put some of the yellow up here, right? So maybe drag that down with the palette knife a little bit. Maybe build that up a little bit more. It's just about sort of creating a color palette and utilizing it to put paint around the canvas in ways that look sort of interesting. So I really want this to be more blue, so I'm going to let that dry a little bit and come back and go over it with some blue, because I really did want that to be more blue than green. So let's wait a few minutes for this to dry so that I can go over this with blue, and then we'll come back and make that a little bit more blue. All right, see you in a minute. Okay, we are dry now, so I'm going to get in there with some of the blue and make it a little bit less green. I'm just going to go right onto there, right? And so we'll come across here like this. It's all about just kind of playing around with colors and shapes And I don't know. I don't think they're, you know, we don't really have hard, fast rules here. It's just all about playing, as you can see. And hopefully you're having a good time playing while you're watching this. I am going to, yeah. So we've got our horizon, and we've got our light gray thing, and we've got our, you know, smaller gray, and we've got our bigger yellow going on, and we've got some stuff going on down here, we got some stuff going on up here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce sort of a contrasty thing. So we got yellow, blue, gray, and now I need something that's very different from all of those. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with some red, just to shake things up. And I haven't cleaned off my palette, so you can sort of see how things are working here. Shake this up. And we'll add some red to the palette. And I'm going to take this little palette knife. And I'm not quite even sure what I'm going to do, but I know I just want to get something that has a little bit of something different going on. So maybe what I'll do is I'll pull that down here like that. So it looks like it's coming out of that blue, right? And just gives it a little something else to see, to look at. And then I'm going to do the same thing up here and just pull the red and got a little bit on the table. And this red is a little bit transparent, which is kind of cool. And then what I want to do is, now that we've got the red in two different places, maybe I'll put it a little bit down here as well. I'm going to take my chopstick and I'm going to use this red as something, just give it a little bit of texture, right? So just draw, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to give it some texture so it's not solid, and go back in and do the same thing down there. And then we're going to let that dry a little bit, and then we'll tie the whole thing up. And let's introduce a tiny bit of red right up there too. And when we finish, when we come back, we're going to finish it up with our last little bit of color. I think what I'm going to end up doing is putting a little bit of the yellow right there, so that it kind of covers over this blue, and the blue kind of cuts into the yellow. But maybe let's touch a little bit of red there too. Smudge that with our fingers a little bit. And then, all right, so we'll see in a minute when this is dry, and we'll talk about what we've created. And I'll show you a little surprise that I have for you too, okay? All right, see you soon. Okay, now I'm going to put some yellow back into this so that it's not too and then once we have that, now we can draw some more lines in here, right? So let's do that. Let's come in and scrape some of this yellow away. Like that. And then take this and let's do some nice horizontal lines. Maybe a vertical line or two, and maybe a twist. And you see what it's doing is it's showing what's underneath. And so that's, once again, how we get some depth in here. right? And so we can just keep scraping, just keep scraping. And the more scraping we do, the more we reveal underneath. And take this and smooth some yellow here. And the idea is just to keep making it more and more interesting by adding layers and taking layers away, and adding layers and taking layers away. And that depth makes it look like everything you've done was intentional. That's what we want. We want it all to look intentional. So we can draw some lines going down here, and maybe some more horizontals, and maybe we'll connect this, right? So what we've got now is we've got some, pretty interesting structure, I think. We've got a big thing here. We've got our horizon line, right? We'll scrape that a little bit. We've got a little bit of interesting stuff. And then we've got a darker shape coming down here. And we got the red, we got the blue, and we've also got the density of our white and covering over the brown, and we've got a pretty interesting looking piece here, right? So what I want to show you is that while I was letting things dry, I also painted another piece, and it's a little bit different, but it's the same color palette. And what I wanted to show you was how by using the brown and then the white, how we've got so much going on here in the background that's not just what's happening in the colors that we painted. And then this one that I did a similar thing. I reversed it. I did gray on the bottom, and it's a little bit smaller, and the yellow on the top, and it's a little bit bigger. But you see how flat white this is. It's just not that interesting. It doesn't look like it's integrated into the background. These shapes look like they're just sitting on top, whereas these shapes look like they've been brought out of what we had in the background here, and everything feels like it is. Everything feels like it is a part of the canvas, like it's got depth, like it's got a little bit of density, and like everything has a little bit of weight. Whereas here, once again, it's still interesting. Don't get me wrong, but the flatness of this, like I said, it makes it feel like all of our color is just sitting right on top. So we've got the flat white, and we've got the dense, and we've got the flat, and we've got the dense. And ironically, I think my colors are actually a little bit more interesting on this one, because I think my balance is a little bit better. It's smaller here, it's bigger up here. My horizon line worked a little bit better. So I might let everything dry on this guy and create some more balance, make my balance work better. But I still really like what's going on here in the background and how everything feels a little bit more like it's a part of the whole. So maybe what I'll do is, I guess I can zoom out a little bit, and I can show you the whole thing together. Let's move this paint. So here are my two, just so you can see how they look together, and hopefully that makes the case for why you want to start with a dark color and then paint a light color on top and then build your color on top of that, versus starting with just your white canvas. And again, you know, this also shows you a little bit of how your balance works. I think this one is a little bit more balanced than this one. So if I were to keep working on this one, I might go back and change the balance a little bit and make this a little bit smaller, make this a little bit bigger, just like this one is. But I am happy with how both of these have turned out, and I hope you are happy with yours as well. And so thank you so much for joining me. I'll hold these up just so you can see them. This is the one where we painted flat, and this is the one where we got some depth in there by starting with some color. And I hope you enjoyed painting, and I hope you came up with some really nice looking things of your own. And I hope you keep painting, and I hope you join us at more of our mini art labs here at McCall Center for Art and Innovation. And if you want to see some more of my work, you can find it on Instagram at Laurie Smithwick. And then I also have a website, which is lauriesmithwick.com. And if you want to reach out to me on Instagram and share some of your work, I would love to see what you created from this video and anything else that you have done. Please reach out and contact me and share your work with me. And thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you keep creating, and I hope you had a good time, and I hope I'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.